Good morning, Internet. Today, for my little Pearls of Wisdom vlog for August the 30th of 2016, I thought it might be kind of fun to talk a little bit about my role as Associate Editor for the Scientific Journal Manual of Therapy, and specifically the kinds of things that I see repeatedly in papers that get submitted to that journal that immediately tell me that the author is a novice author rather than an experienced author. And I think maybe by giving you some of these things that immediately stick out to me sort of as the novice author sore thumb, that maybe some of you who are novice authors can look for these things in your papers, maybe go back and maybe change them, and that way you might get a little bit of a better review when you submit your papers. And this isn't specific to manual therapy. This is, I think, going to go across the board for most scientific journals, not even just those in physical therapy. So here I go. Without further ado, I've got my top 6 things that I noticed that clearly give away that this is a novice author rather than an experienced author. Number 1, an overly long introduction. I usually try to tell my students to aim for an introduction of between 3 and 5 paragraphs. 5 is even a little bit on the high side. 3 to 4 is probably good. Generally, you want to structure your introduction as paragraph 1 indicating the breadth of the problem you're addressing, paragraph 2 talking about the specific knowledge gap that you're going to fill with this paper, and paragraph 3 describing the purpose of your study. If you need an extra paragraph in the middle there to perhaps describe a bit more about the knowledge gap, then you can add a 4th. But that's about it. When we see 6, 7 paragraph introductions, pretty clear that either you have a problem writing concisely, or you're kind of trying to just get credit for all of the background work you've done, which isn't necessary in a scientific publication. Going along with that, speaking of multiple paragraphs, is one-sentence paragraphs. So really, and also just beware of one-sentence paragraphs. I'll call you on it each time. Number 2, being Sesquipedalian. Look it up. One of my favorite words is Sesquipedalian because it is a multisyllabic word for being overly multisyllabic. It refers to times that you use sort of larger words when shorter words would really suffice, but you might be trying to sort of, I don't know, make your sentence sound a little bit more science-y than it really needs to be. So common examples would be things like individuals rather than people, or utilized rather than used. Your scientific papers should still read nice, and so readers don't like to read multi-syllable words if a monosyllabic or 2-syllable word would do the trick. So be kind to your readers. If you don't need a big, fancy, long, multi-syllable word, just use the normal word. Number 3, I'm calling it losing the plot or not giving the reader a thread. So as a reader of your scientific paper, I should be able to follow sort of the thread of your plot from introduction that sets the tone of why you did what you did, through methods that tells me how you did what you were going to do in order to address your knowledge gap, through the analysis section that tells me what I should be prepared to read in your results, and it should again follow back to your purpose for your paper. Your results need to flow nicely from your analysis, and this is probably one of the biggest places I see this sort of thread get broken, is I'll be reading through a paper and all of a sudden a result will show up that wasn't described in the analysis. And I'll go, wait a second, where did that come from? Or an analysis was described, but then there's no results reported for it. So common things like, for this actually, a common example would be reporting results for normality of data or for evaluating whether you've violated any assumptions of the statistical tests that you've used, which is a good thing to do, incidentally, but a statement in the results section that says assumptions for our t-test or our regression were not violated, and then carrying on, actually gives me no additional information. I want to know how you tested those. So anything that shows up in your results needs to have an analog back up in your analysis, and if it doesn't, then I've lost the thread and I've lost the plot. Similarly, then, following on, your discussion needs to really grow organically out of the results. So don't discuss anything that hasn't been reported in your results section and vice versa. anything in your results, though, should be discussed in your discussion section. The next one we've got here, number 4, is being overly precise with your stats. Probably the biggest or the most common one I see here is when people report mean age to like 2 decimal places, so 1/100th of a year. I normally tell my students that it's okay to report a mean to 1 point of precision greater than what you captured it. So for example, the mean of 1 and 2 is 1.5. That's fine. It's not 1.50. It doesn't need to be that. That kind of goes back to the whole thing about being Sesquipedalian, really. But you'll see this a lot. So you'll see it in means. I see it whether it's F values, correlations reported to 3 decimal places. Just because SPSS or whatever stats program you're using outputs your stat to 3 decimal places doesn't mean you have to report all 3 of those. Report, again, to the decimal places or to the precision that makes sense for the analysis that you did. Where this is most bothersome, actually, is in p-values. If you've said that you've set your alpha error rate at a p-value of 0.05, then there's no need to report a p-value to 3 decimal places, to 1/1000th of a point. You can report it to 2 decimal places, right? And if it's below 0.05, that's wonderful. If it goes beyond that, then you could call it less than 0.01. Or maybe it's a really strong difference and it's less than 0.001. The only time that's different is if perhaps you've done a Bonferroni correction of your p-value because you've done multiple analyses or multiple comparisons and you've said that the corrected p-value is 0.0125, for example. In that case, then report your p-values to the same precision as what you've just told us is a significant value in your analysis section. So there's no need to report p-values to more than 2 decimal places in most cases. And if you do, there should be rationale for doing so. Going along with that one is my next one, item 5, which is reporting p-values of either 0.000 or even more egregious, less than 0.000. Again, this to me clearly indicates that someone's just kind of copy-pasted from the SPSS output and put it into their paper. It also highlights a bit of a lack of understanding of sort of what p-values are and what they mean from a post-positivistic epistemic standpoint. And what that is we're never 100% confident that our hypothesis is true. At best, usually we're 95% confident that an alternative hypothesis or a null hypothesis is not true. Okay, and so there's always a bit of uncertainty there. That's kind of the world of post-positivism. That's the world of quantitative research that most of us live in. So you would never report a p-value of 0.00. That's saying you're 100% certain that this difference did not occur by chance, which just violates sort of the general philosophical position of quantitative research. If you get that value, really all that's saying is that SPSS or whatever stats program you use rounds to 3 decimal places. If it went further, you'd probably eventually see a number, or you would eventually see a number. So in that case, use a less than 0.01 or less than 0.001. Again, depending on what precision of p-value you really need to report based on what you told us in your analysis section. So you can see now how we're talking about following the thread all the way down. And then number 6, the final one here that, again, discriminates for me between a novice and an experienced researcher or author would be statements like, this tool is valid, or this study proves that. And this kind of goes back to my last point. Things like validity, any kind of really quantitative research for that matter, are not definitive in most aspects of the kind of research that we do. The only time that is sometimes different, let's say, might be in physics, for example, where somebody identifies a new law, a law of gravity or a law of whatever, where we're pretty confident that those are actually true. I'm fairly confident that gravity exists, and we're pretty clear about what that means by now. But most of the work we do, so things like trying to validate a scale, that's a process. That's not an endpoint. We never hit an endpoint that we can say, okay, this scale is clearly valid. We can say that there's this study provides evidence for the validity or provides support for the validity of this tool, or the construct validity or concurrent validity, whatever type you're looking at. but it would be incorrect to say that we use this tool because this tool is valid. Similar as though, in a similar vein, it would be incorrect to say the results of this study clearly show that or prove that or something like that. Again, that's not the nature of research that we do. Again, it would be more accurate to say that this study lends support to the hypothesis that, or something along those lines. So there we go. That's my top 6 most common things, sort of clues that I can immediately scan through a paper that comes in and see, do I think this is this likely a novice author or is this likely an experienced author? That's not to say that experienced authors don't make some of these mistakes as well. Certainly not to say that I don't make them from time to time. But maybe by hearing these, I'll encourage you to go back, maybe look at some of your papers you've had a hard time getting accepted, and just see if you've made any of those little hiccups that kind of tip your hand a little bit to the reviewers. All right, off for now.